right. Welcome, everybody. Glad you could join us. If everyone wants to go ahead and mute their microphone for the moment, and then when we pause for questions periodically, unmute yourself, but this way we'll avoid a little bit of background noise. As most of you know, in this group, we study fiscal issues like taxes, spending, deficits, and economic issues like job growth, the unemployment rate, wage growth, real GDP growth. Looking at the second slide, our goal is to help you understand the facts.
Hey, Carl.
So you can share.
Everybody sees slides because I don't see slides.
Yeah,
Okay.
let Bill start the slideshow.
Okay.
It's Bill's fault. Always Bill's fault.
It is.
Well, everyone got a link to the slideshow. They can run it on their own computer.
All right.
We're all doing something else on our own computer. All right.
All right. So here we've got the fiscal and economic issues discussion group. Someone, and we want to go to slide 2.
Yes. All right. Currently, in terms of we try to get the facts, but there's a lot of uncertainty as to the facts right now because the situation is changing very rapidly. And back in February, we reported that, we had a 3.5% unemployment rate with 270,000 jobs added. A pretty good economy, albeit, one that was being propped up with a $1 trillion annual deficit. But overall, pretty good economy. Then the virus showed up and we started to react to it. And in the last 4 weeks, 22 million people have filed unemployment claims. So it's a much different economy. Oh, I should have said welcome to the happy hour. But anyhow, we go to slide 3. Not back to 1, go forward to 3, but we'll get there. We're going to talk about the fiscal and economic impacts, and totally necessary. So where are we? Our economic future is obviously dependent on how this new virus behaves. And there's a lot of things about the virus we don't know. The extent of the spread in the US, we still don't have enough test kits to test everybody. We can look at the reports that say that X number of people, in the US have, tested positively for the virus, but many more people probably, are infected by the virus or have been infected by the virus, and we just don't know it. The government has ordered shutdowns of non-essential businesses to suppress the spread and reduce how many people die. Some states look to be trying to ease off those as early as Friday in Georgia and elsewhere. Florida last week with reopening their beaches. Dr. Fauci, among others, think this is a little early, but we will see. And it's unclear what things are going to look like over the next year and a half. Again, it depends upon what the virus does. The U.S. government has passed a fair amount of aid. And in terms of the data we've got on jobs and things like that, so far the monthly employment reports we've got are pre-crisis. April report in early May will be the first post-crisis month. Going forward to the next slide, we see that March did show a decline of 701,000 jobs in the establishment report. The household survey showed a decline of 3 million people employed. And go to the next slide. In the last 4 weeks, 22 million people have filed for unemployment. So, and about over 10 million of those were before the end of March. So clearly more people were losing jobs than are reported in the March reports because the March reports are really mid-month reports. I think they're the week that concludes the 12th of the month. Whatever the week ending is there, like the 14th or something. So it is, the reports aren't current except for the unemployment filings, but even that is, as of a week and a half ago. We'll get last week's numbers on Thursday. Going down, this is a huge number of unemployment. We saw it on the last graph where we were at before this blip. We were under 300,000 new unemployment filings per week. Our historical record was 665,000 a week. Over the last 4 weeks, we've averaged 5.5 million. So this is huge, huge numbers. I think one week we had 6.6, 6.9 million filings. So what are we seeing in the unemployment report, slide 8? The official reports, again, mid-March data, showed that the U3 unemployment rate had gone up from 3.5% to 4.4%, and the U6 rate had gone up from 7% to 8.7%. But if we look at, what we have if we had the number of people that were counted as unemployed and, add 22 million to that, and we're looking at an unemployment rate probably of around 15% right now in reality. But we won't get numbers, again, we won't get, official data to confirm that until the first week of May. The other thing that's interesting here, the next slide is part-time for economic reasons. Officially, people who are working part-time for economic reasons are counted as employed in the U3 rate and unemployed in the U6 rate. Historically, they have not been able to file for unemployment benefits. However, this time they can. And so there's some number of people who became unemployed, who became part-time workers recently, who have the ability to file for unemployment benefits, but won't be counted as unemployed in the U3 rate, just to confuse things as to what are the facts. It's depends on how you define them. Next slide is inflation rates, and the key there is inflation has started to go down because of energy, as you see on the slide 11, where there's big numbers because a lot of us are not driving. I mean, my car historically has gotten about 25 miles to the gallon. Now I'm getting about 3 to 4 weeks to the gallon. I just don't drive. And the stock market had performed reasonably well over the 3 years that President Trump has been in office. Crashed at the end of February and has come back somewhat. So we're still down about 60% versus the peak, but I don't know. I think we were down 30-some% versus the peak at the bottom there. What actions is the government taking? And basically we're trying to strengthen the safety net, increase unemployment insurance coverage, start it without the traditional 1 week delay in qualifying for benefits, incorporating 1099 workers, some non-payroll workers who haven't been paying into the unemployment insurance funds, and also adding $600 a week to unemployment benefits to make them stronger during this downturn where really the bulk of the unemployment is government-ordered unemployment. The government has ordered a bunch of businesses to shut down or cut way back. and they're trying to replace the income. And they're doing a pretty good job of that in terms of who's getting the help. But a problem we've got is, as we'll get to later, there are some holes in there. They're also trying to help businesses stay in business, and that especially because they run out of funds on the small business payroll protection program. That's not working as well. But frankly, the unemployment benefits is very delayed because remember, states were processing under 300,000 claims a week, and now they're processing over 5 million claims a week, and they just don't have the capacity to be able to process that many claims. They haven't ramped up sufficiently yet, and so they're all states are playing catch up. So looking at slide 15, this is what we presented last month, where some countries are saying, stay at home, you can keep a percentage of your wage, and then when when the business reopens, you can resume work. Other countries are taking the approach, stay at home, file an unemployment insurance claim, get unemployment benefits, and resume work. The U.S. is actually taking both approaches. The payroll protection program is, country A approach of keeping people employed. Small companies get loans that as long as they keep the people employed for X number of months, the loans are forgiven. And then we also have, as we talked about, stronger unemployment benefits for those people that do get let go from their jobs. So, we're taking both approaches. Slide 16 is a wonderful graph that talks about the flows of, the source of funds and where it's ending up, and feel free to study that on your own. Very confusing. Slide 17 was originally put together with, let's assume we take the average at $1,200 per person, per adult, and $500 per child relief check and see how that does to cover a family's expenses. Well, as my comments on the right say, most people are expected to get something else besides these checks, unemployment benefits or continuing in their job. So these checks are to provide a bridge until the other compensation kicks in. Although if you're still working and getting paid, I'm seeing that some number of people are going out and getting nice new TVs, and other stuff. So for a lot of families, it's that bridge until unemployment compensation kicks in, SNAP benefits kick in, and other benefits. So when we look at the next slide, most people with reduced incomes are going to receive financial assistance of some sort, unemployment compensation, including that extra $600 per week and the one-time $1,200 per adult checks. No assistance for undocumented workers, except indirectly, because the payroll continuation assistance to companies continues even for if they keep on their undocumented workers, they can pay them and get that portion of the loans forgiven. So that's the one piece of assistance for undocumented workers. Otherwise, undocumented workers are left out. Delayed help for 1099 workers. States have to figure out how to process these claims, new systems. The new website in Illinois is not due to be available until May 11th. The initial direction was to wait until then to apply. Last week's direction is to apply through the old system, get declined, to establish your effective date, even though benefits won't arrive until after the new system's up in May. So that's confusing, and I'm not sure how many people have heard the new rules about applying now. Obviously, workers who historically underreported their income, such as tipped workers getting paid in cash and not reporting all their cash income, will have benefits based on the reported incomes, not their actual incomes, but plus the extra $600 per week. And the assistance for companies has got bigger holes, especially with the small business loan program having exhausted their funds last week. Although it looks like that fund will be supplemented early this week, possibly as early as tomorrow or Wednesday. So the idea is that most people are going to be caught up. Okay, there's a millionaire's loophole in what the Congress passed in the CARES Act. The details are here. The bottom line is that this is, bad policy, increase inequality, and I can't see any justification for it, but our Republican friends like it. So I don't know whether the Democrats will be able to repeal this. I'm not sure. I don't think they're even trying to repeal it in the legislation this week. Although I don't think the legislation this week will be the last attempt at legislation for the coronavirus relief. So the budget deficit. Before the coronavirus hit, our budget deficit was going to increase to over $1 trillion, $1.1 trillion. When the coronavirus hits and we start to see people getting let go, if we don't do anything else, if we didn't pass any new legislation, the budget deficit would increase because tax revenue would fall because employment would drop and there'd be lower income and payroll taxes, and automatic stabilizers would kick in, the normal unemployment insurance, Medicaid, food stamps, and also, Medicaid, and also support through the ACA exchanges, premium benefits. And the legislative effect of the bills we just passed has been in order of magnitude $2 trillion, including the CARES Act. So we're going to have a huge budget deficit this year. If we look at the next slide, we can see where the money in the CARES Act, this is really small, and feel free to look at this at your leisure. The next slide shows a little bit, better where we're going. We've got in 2020, before the crisis, we were estimating a $1.1 trillion deficit. The Family First Act added $134 billion. The CARES Act added over $2 trillion to the deficit this year. The economic changes from the lost revenue and the normal automatic stabilizers added $570 billion. And so we're projecting, CBO is projecting, or actually this is a combination of the CBO and the Committee for Responsible Budget, is about $3.8 trillion this year. By comparison, our biggest budget deficit was in fiscal year 2009 of $1.4 trillion. And that was during the beginning of the Great Recession, George Bush's last budget year, and went down. We had, I think, 4 years of budget deficits in excess of $1 trillion at that point. But this is dwarfing what we were seeing during the Great Recession. I mean, the reality is the pre-crisis deficit was way too high. What we're adding right now is probably the right thing to do to support the economy because of all the government-ordered shutdowns. In our John Maynard Keynes, the boom, not the slump, is the right time for austerity. We're in the slump. So this is not the right time for austerity. February might have been the right time for austerity, but not April, May, June of 2020. We need to be spending and running big budget deficits this year so that people don't starve, people don't die. And we're now at a break. Or Dave gets to take over.
Is this a time to ask questions, Carl?
Oh, absolutely. Go good time to ask questions about any part of the presentation. So
I wasn't, I didn't quite understand what that millionaire's loophole was. Can you explain that so I would understand it?
Oh, are you up for that challenge?
I read a little bit about it. It has to do with in the 2017 legislation, there was a cap on how much of your business losses could be taken against other income, is my understanding. I think it was 250,000 or something like that. And now that limit has been lifted, and so people that have big business losses this year in certain kinds of business, hedge funds and real estate folks, can now take huge losses to offset other income. And so this is showing the average windfall for this group of people is like $1.7 million.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions for Carl, or are there any questions in the comments area?
This is Jim. Just a comment on the, my wife's been doing a lot of reading about the pandemic in 1918, and she says it is so parallel to what is going on right now. They had stay-at-home orders, they closed businesses, people in certain areas protested, others stayed in, and the ones that protested and went out got sicker and died. So, I mean, I think we can learn a lot from looking at that 1918 Spanish flu pandemic and how long it lasted.
And people were wearing masks back in 1918, and
Yes.
the Asian countries that are doing well have a history and a mentality to go ahead and wear masks in situations like this, where our liberty folks won't. I mean, it's interesting, reading about how different states are reopening right now, where Florida went ahead and reopened their beaches last Friday evening, and people were supposed to stay apart, but there was no requirement to wear masks. And I saw a number of pictures where the beaches were overcrowded with people who weren't wearing masks. And I fear that we're going to see a blip upwards in the number of cases there. By contrast, the state of Texas, the first thing they're doing to lift restrictions is they're going to open up the state parks with requirements that you both social distance and wear masks. And that's the one place where I'm seeing both of those requirements in place.
It's really disappointing. I mean, I made a couple of trips to stores today. I wear a mask and the latex gloves to see how many people don't seem to care. Not wearing masks, not wearing gloves, and yet out and about.
Well, one thing to be clear about is a mask does not prevent the need for the distancing. The distancing
Right.
is still important because somebody exhales something, you might breathe it in if you're too close to them. But if you stay away from them, it'll settle to the ground or to the surface before you can breathe it in. Then it's just a matter of touch your face, and the mask prevents you from doing that stuff.
Yeah.
So the mask does not mean you can be close to somebody.
Especially if they're not wearing masks.
Hello, Carl. Hello, Carl.
Hi.
Hi, this is Haji. CPU.
Yes. Hi, Haji. I see you. I hear you.
Yeah, it's a long time. I have a question about printing money and electronics money. What's the difference when the Fed is printing money or is generating digital money?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch all those words.
Yeah, I had in the last presentation you were talking about they have they have issued the money, $2.2 trillion, and some of the money that was sent to bank or something through digitizing. So they are not printing money, but they are in the form of the sending money in digitally, a bond buying or something like that.
Yeah, that really doesn't make any difference, because if you send money electronically to a bank, I can go take it out in bills. So it's just the same as printing money anyway.
It is the same.
Yeah,
Is that right, Carl?
well,
I think so, Carl.
yeah, I mean, it's what we've got right now is a couple of different things going on. Even within the CARES Act, we've got spending and we've got loans. Some of the loans are designed to be forgiven, so effectively they're spending. Some of the loans are designed to be repaid, and so they won't end up adding to the deficit. And so, I mean, that's one part of the answer. The other thing is we've got things that we're doing Congress fiscally, and then we also have things that the Federal Reserve is doing, which Dave plans to cover in the next section.
So are you saying that the congressional things do not increase the money supply, but the Fed's things do? Is that the point?
I don't get into too much in the weeds on the Fed issues and money supply and all that kind of stuff. So I'll leave those answers to David.
Thank you, Carl.